The Chiefs are going to be going to the Super Bowl, and Taylor Swift is sure to show up. And I'm going to get to Taylor Swift because, I think in 2019, George Soros bought all the rights to her music. It shouldn't shock us that she's an extreme liberal because she came out as liberal kind of in 2020. Well, extreme liberal anyway. In 2016, she was liberal. But in 2020, she endorses Joe Biden, right? All of her songs are about how she's bad at picking men. So, yeah, her endorsement of Joe Biden is, just indicative of how she's so bad at picking men. But Taylor Swift, she sold all of the rights to her music to George Soros, I think back in 2019. We're going to get to this. So it shouldn't shock anybody that she turned out to be some sort of crazy liberal in 2020. Okay, I don't think that's a coincidence where you've got George Soros buying the rights to her music and then she's this crazy liberal. George Soros is also the one who backs all of these pro criminal DAs. So, yeah, I'm just saying, this makes sense that she's an extreme liberal and it's gonna be the Taylor Bowl. I really wanted the Ravens to win, but hey, is what it is. The Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. We've got so much to talk about this morning. You can see me live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. There's this superintendent out there in North Carolina, and he just got busted for trying to close down the school. And the school is for special ed kids. They're for special needs students, and they were going to shut down the school and turn it into a migrant facility. That's appalling. It's disturbing. So we're going to talk about that superintendent. Be on the lookout because that could happen in your community. If it can happen in North Carolina, you don't think it's going to happen in a blue state. So then we're also going to talk about Leah Thomas today. He's taking legal action so that he can compete against women in the Olympics. So he's trying to remain relevant. That's Will Thomas. And then a little bit later, this story, I always pull these when I find these because I just can't wrap my head around headlines like this. Two Starbucks employees, they fought off these robbers in St. Louis and they saved their own lives. They saved the people who were at that Starbucks that day, their lives. And the company fired the employees who fought these robbers off. The company fired them for it. So we're going to talk about it here on the Morning Buzz. I do want to start with an Illinois story today. You can find it on cities99.com or the Center Square. I sat down, talked to a couple folks about this grocery initiative. So it's called the Illinois Grocery Initiative. And as part of this grocery initiative here in Illinois, eligible local grocers are going to apply for funding for energy efficient equipment upgrades. It's kind of unclear still if they can get equipment that's not energy efficient, but a lot of newer equipment is already energy efficient. So likely they're going to get coolers, green coolers, right? They're going to get some green weenie coolers. And this is going to come at a cost of $3.5 million to the taxpayers. Okay. Now, before I get into the story, I want to make it clear that I am all about local grocery stores. I think that these big box stores are not as good. I try to shop local as much as I can. It's even though it's a little more expensive because you start to make connections with people, like the farmers who it's from field to table or from farm to table. These local grocers, and I think that they play a huge role in the community. Okay, so I'm not going to rip on local grocers, but I'm going to explain this because Senator Dave Fowler, who's pro this uh, grocery initiative and this program that's $3.5 million. It's a $3.5 million cost to the taxpayer, this funding that they apply for via the Department of Economic Commerce Opportunity, something like that. They apply for these grants and then they get these grants. Now, the rural stores are having a hard time competing with the big box stores. Okay. Dale Fowler, who's the senator who's Republican from Harrisburg, he said a lot of these grocery stores, their equipment, like coolers, freezers, are about 60 years old. Yes, and energy bills are through the roof. Yes, and I've always noticed this too, but I think it's kind of the purpose of living rural, right? I grew up in a rural community, and we drove 30 miles or 30 minutes to the nearest grocery store, like a big grocery store. We had a local one growing up, and we went to that one. It was about 10, 15 minutes away, like a convenient type store. Um, but Fowler, the senator, said that we will see how this all unfolds, this grocery initiative, and there will be another phase of this. So, possibly more taxpayer money for the grants if this goes well, probably. But he says that he has a county in his district where there's not a single grocery store. Well, you've got to make the food somewhere. So, like a lot of these rural communities, right? You've got farmland, and you can't farm if there's a big old grocery store and parking lot in the middle of this farmland. So there's going to be some areas that don't have a grocery store. Okay, that's just common sense. It just, it shouldn't freak us out. It's just the way it is. Some areas don't have the grocery stores. They take that area that doesn't have the grocery store and they make the food that goes into the grocery store. So you have to drive about, 10, 15, 30 minutes to a grocery store. If it's not within walking distance, it's okay. Okay, that doesn't mean you have food insecurity. It just means that those areas don't have the grocery store. Typically, those areas are the ones making the food to fill the grocery stores. But anyway, I digress. Uh, I don't think that there's a food shortage here in America. We need to preserve our farmland and to make sure that our farmland isn't being bought up by foreign nationals and foreign entities. We need to protect our farmland. That's probably the best way to fight off any kind of food insecurity, okay, that we may or may not have here in the United States. Okay, so and another thing to fight food insecurity would be stopping the taxation, the wild taxation that Illinois business owners are going through, and stopping these energy costs. It's making it difficult for rural grocers to buy equipment on their own without the grant. Okay, so when local grocers hear this, they're like $3.5 million, and I could apply for some money. I could maybe get like 20,000. That'd be great. I could get a new cooler that I haven't been able to afford my whole life. And, for 60 years, this cooler's 60 years old. I want a new cooler. Well, the reason they can't afford it on their own is because of the overtaxation. And the reason why we have overtaxation and this tax burden here in the state of Illinois is because we come up with silly things like this, where you've got an initiative of $3.5 million and you're robbing the taxpayers. But uh, here's something interesting, and this is the sentiment of every single make no mistake, of every single lawmaker. And really, I'm not going to rip on them for this. It's just if something just doesn't click with lawmakers, they'll say things like, well, 3.5 is not a lot of money. 3.5 million is not a lot of money because you spread that out statewide and the burden is spread out. So it's not very impactful on the taxpayer. Uh, when you have that sentiment for every single initiative or spending package that Governor J.B. Pritzker wants to tout, I want to throw $40 million to schools. I want to throw $3.5 million to local grocers. I want to give everybody money. These like these huge checks. When you've got these huge checks coming out, that all adds up. It's death by a thousand cuts. Okay, and that's what taxpayers, or that's what lawmakers don't wrap their heads around, is that hey, the taxpayer is suffering. Uh, by a death of by a thousand cuts. If you keep this mentality of, oh well, we're going to spread it out statewide, it's not going to be that much. And this is like the snake eating its tail. It's just this vicious revolving door where you get caught up. They're like, okay, the overtaxation, they can't afford things, so let's spend money, let's give them grants from the government. but we're gonna have to take that money from the taxpayer, and that's why that they can't afford their own coolers. It's because of the overtaxation on initiatives like this. I just don't know why they don't see it. All right, I do want to shift gears in this story. Still talking about this story, but there's something else that happened with this bill before it got passed where they approved this, equipments upgrade program within the Illinois Grocery Initiative that Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to be touting this morning and for the rest of the week because he's tackling food insecurity. Um, this $3.5 million was made available because of taxation of the state of Illinois. And, um, originally the bill, they didn't include convenience stores or non traditional grocery stores. So the Illinois Fuel and Retail Association, they were originally against this. The CEO of the Illinois Fuel and Retail Association said that the association fought to try to get these non-traditional grocery stores to be included in this law and to be able to get the grant because hey, it's kind of unfair. I run a very small convenience store. I'm a business owner and maybe I have a little gas station, but I'm not what you would call a traditional grocery store. Why do I have to suffer with my 60-year-old cooler? And that guy over there gets all this money to go replace his cooler just because I'm not a non traditional grocery store. So the association, long story short, they're no longer an opponent of the law, but they're neutral because they got it to where the bill was amended to include some non-traditional grocery stores. They may be eligible, but they've got to apply still. And the Department of Economic Opportunity, Commerce and Economic Opportunity, they get to decide who gets the money. So there's a statute where if you have to carry as a convenience store perishable food items like fresh meat, poultry, dairy, things like that, and then you might be able to get the grant money. But Josh Sharp, the CEO of the Illinois Fuel and Retail Association, it was incredible talking to him because we talked about the business owner. We talked about convenience store owners and what they're suffering with. And, right now, uh, there's a large expense. Obviously, labor is the largest operating cost, and then they've got to keep the lights on. But another expense that not a whole lot of people are talking about in the state of Illinois with the business owners, it's this credit card company to process the payment. I know that we here at Cities 92.9, if you're an advertiser or if you want to advertise, in order for us to process your credit card, we have to apply a surcharge just because it's so expensive to process that payment as a small business. So you have to process the payment and pay to process that payment, and that's a large cost for small business owners because that's doubled since the pandemic. Now, Congress, the federal government, they're working on something, and I'm pretty sure that this bill is got JD Vance support and Dick Durbin support. So I think it's a bipartisan bill. I've got to go check it out. I haven't read into it a whole lot, but the Credit Card Competition Act, this is a bill that would give every merchant the choice of a second network to process those transactions. And, we talked about things like labor, Illinois, they just made it to where minimum wage, you've got to start paying, $14 for minimum wage. And then, you've got to pay for their vacations. They get like 40 days worth of vacation or something crazy like that. And you've got to pay for it. And, as a small business owner. So there's a lot of costs that come with being a small business owner. And it's just, Illinois is it's not a very small business friendly state. And this is why they can't afford things like coolers on their own. Hey, and if they were to just roll back some of these unfunded mandates, and if they were to roll back some of this spending that they're doing in Springfield, perhaps the taxpayer, the average business owner, they would be able to pay for things on their own. So Josh Sharp, the association CEO, he said they're neutral, but they did have some issues with it because they're giving taxpayer dollars to compete with the private sector. And yeah, so that's that story. I do want to take a quick break. When we come back, I've got so much more planned for us this morning. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We talked about Pritzker announcing this $3.5 million in grants for the local grocers. And believe me when I say I am all for the local grocers. I think that we should go back to, you know, just local people selling farm to table products. I'm totally all for that. The preservatives, these big box stores like Walmart. I don't even shop at Walmart. I try to shop at Aldi, um, and my local IGA. I love my local IGA. Love local grocers. Love small business owners. However, $3.5 million at a this is a cost to the taxpayers, and this is why. And it's like the snake eating its tail. This is why these small business owners can't get ahead. It's because you're constantly spending, this $3.5 million in tax money. They'll say, oh, it's spread out and blah, blah, blah. But they keep that mentality for everything that they pass, these lawmakers. They'll keep that mentality. And then you're suffering death by a thousand cuts as a taxpayer. So, this $3.5 million, it might be this nice, quick, a quick money for the local grocer. But over time, things like this is why you can't afford. Let's get to the heart of why local grocers cannot afford freezers and coolers for their business. Okay, at the heart of the issue, there is an overtaxation problem in the state of Illinois, and there are high energy costs, and they can't get ahead. These local rural grocery stores to buy their own equipment. It's because it's not small business friendly here in this state. There's unfunded mandates. You have to pay people, ridiculous amounts of money. You got to pay for them to stay at home now. There's this new bill out there where, I think you got to have at least 40 days leave or whatever, and you got to pay for them while they're, on leave. And you got to pay them $14 an hour, $15 an hour next year. So they just can't get ahead, these small business owners. And that's really what's going on here is, why can the local grocers not afford it themselves? And me, if I were a lawmaker, that would be the question I would want to answer. Why can't they afford it themselves? And then get at the heart of that issue. Instead of this, quick fix of let's spend more taxpayer money, let's exacerbate the problem, and let's spend even more taxpayer money, and we'll spend $3.5 million and we'll tax the entire state for it, and then they can get their cooler. That's going to wind up hurting you in the long run even more. So, smash that like button. We're going to be talking about Leah Thomas today, and hopefully visiting with William J. Kelly. He's a Chicago reporter, by the way. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Coming up in just a little bit, we will be talking with William J. Kelly. Is a Chicago reporter, Jacoby Jackson. This is a guy, he's facing carjacking charges, and he's been accused of beating up a driver and taking their car at the Logan Square gas station. This is out of Chicago. And the reason why he's accused is because he accidentally left his brother's cell phone at the crime scene. So, we've got to be on the lookout. Be alert, Chicago. That guy is out there. He's on the run. We're going to chat a little bit about that and some other Chicago things once William joins us. But first, I want to talk about the superintendent who was busted in North Carolina for trying to secretly close down a school for special needs kids. And he was going to close this school down and turn it into a migrant facility. We're gonna get to that story, but one thing that I want to hit before we get William J. Kelly on here is, the pandemic, it should have taught the left. And if the pandemic should have taught the left anything, it would be that school closures cause educational harm that is irreparable and it's disastrous. Okay, if the pandemic taught the left anything, it should be that when you close down schools, there are there's educational harm done, and it's irreparable. You cannot fix that harm done to that student when you force them to not go to school and you close down their school. Uh, and there is it's disastrous, and that's true for your average student. Uh, eh, Closing down schools not good for them. But school closures, I think, are even worse for those who have special needs and need extra attention in school. You would think that these people would have learned their lesson during the pandemic. Nope, never. Never, ever, ever. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't close down schools. We see the educational harm done to our students. It's even worse for kids who have special needs. Uh, let's never shut down schools again. Nope, they did not learn because the No Human is Illegal mob, they have closed down this North Carolina. They wanted to close down. They didn't. They weren't successful, but they were going to close down this school district in North Carolina, where they were going to secretly close down this special needs school and turn it into what they call a resettlement facility for migrants. So yes, we're talking about putting illegals and prioritizing their education over Americans' education. And that's wrong. We'll get to that story. But first, I do want to have William J. Kelly on this morning, Monday morning. He joins us to fill us in on all things Chicago. I was telling folks about this guy, William. You got to tell me about Jacob E. Jackson. And you said on your social media page, "Be alert, Chicago." Who is this guy? What has he done?
Oh, well, all day, every day, we've got nothing but repeat violent offenders back out on the street, uh, committing the exact same crimes that they committed hours before. And many times they're repeat offenders with firearms. And as you well know, they want Governor Pritzker wants the law-abiding gun owners to have their rights restricted, while violent repeat offenders are right back out on the street committing crimes, armed robberies with long guns. The police in the city of Chicago, they don't want to, why would they want to get involved with any of that kind of nonsense, right? So this is what's happening in Chicago. Chicago and Illinois, Kat, this is important, okay, leads the country in mass shootings for over a decade. Okay, this is like a Guinness Book of World's Record, okay? And this is a problem, as a lifelong Chicagoan, I love Chicago with all my heart. It has broken my heart to hear Republicans. Okay, I understand Democrats being Democrats, I get it. But it's broken my heart to hear Republicans say Chicago gets what it deserves. And I've tried to say to these, Republican leaders in our Illinois, that what what you tolerate in Chicago will eventually be everywhere, and that is exactly what we have now in the entire state of Illinois. There was a particularly, I guess you could almost say, ominous shooting in Chicago on Friday. It was a cold, foggy day. It was like Gotham City, right?
Mm.
Two Chicago public school students walked out of their school at 12 noon in downtown Chicago. Okay, when I was in high, I went to high school on the south side of Chicago. Okay, I guarantee you, these two kids had more money spent on their education than I've probably had spent on my entire education in my life. But I was obviously, and you can relate to this, I was given something that was priceless, which is faith in God and love of freedom. But these two kids who had more money spent on their education, their clothes, their cars, their I don't know what else. Check their Instagram, you'll see. Were shot dead on Wabash. So anyone who knows the city of Chicago knows that this is downtown Chicago. This is the financial district. This is what they call, by the way, Jewelers Row. A friend of mine called me immediately and said, I bought my wife her engagement ring literally across the street from where these two kids were shot.
Mhm.
Now, somebody might say, well, okay, so, you know, I hate to say it, sounds terrible, but okay, two more kids shot in the city of Chicago. No, this one was different. This is 12 noon, Jewelers Row. Okay,
Mm,
there are more cameras in the city of Chicago, security cameras, than there are in London. Okay, I don't know if people fully understand the implications of that, but regardless, this entire I thankfully as a reporter I have gained the trust of many members of the Chicago Police Department, and they told me the entire shooting murder is caught on camera. Okay,
mm,
this could not have been shot more clearly from multiple angles than if you literally had Harvey Weinstein and I don't know who else, Steven Spielberg, uh, ju- uh, uh, filming this as a joint project. Okay,
mm, mhm,
and the shooters did not care. So translation, yesterday, by the way, I was doing an interview at the Cook County Jail, right? And I thought, first of all, 26th in California, not particularly the safest place in the city of Chicago, historically speaking, right?
mhm.
But I thought to myself, oh my God, here I am standing out in front of the Cook County Jail doing a video, doing an interview, right? And two Chicago public school students were shot dead on Wabash. Who's to say that somebody wouldn't just roll up at 26th in California and start shooting? Who's to say that that wouldn't happen anywhere,
Mhm.
anywhere in the city of Chicago, or for that matter, now the state of Illinois? You know,
Yeah, and you've got it in broad daylight. Something
yes,
similar happened in Dallas, and I'd have to pull the story, but it was like a group of 5 guys, all, Hispanic names. I have no idea if they were illegal or not. But they jump out of this red-looking SUV,
yeah,
and then they shoot people in broad daylight. The crimes are getting more sadistic, and it's disturbing to see that people would just do that. I mean, Wabash, I almost lived on Wabash. I I did because
yes,
I was gonna go to school in Chicago. I
Trump
was gonna
Tower, right?
Yeah, yes, I would. I almost lived there. I was looking at an apartment right there when I graduated high school, and I considered it, but it just city life just was never for me, and it was just not going to happen. But yeah, that is not a bad part of town, as you would say, as is like
Yeah,
touristy.
right. And,
And
and the real thing, the reason why this hit me so hard, Kat, is because I thought, who's going to return to the offices? Who's going to return? Who's going to want to sit down at the cafe, across the street from this school? Who's going to
mhm,
want any part of this?
yeah,
I mean, when you see the video, and I don't know if you've seen the video, I'm sure that they've all been taken down by now, but of the Chicago police or the paramedics trying to do CPR on these kids. A friend of mine, I should say, a police officer who has become a friend, thank God, said, that, and it's highly cynical, but thank God they were. One of the kids fell on the street grid. Where the blood just dripped into the sewer instead of all over the sidewalk, because it's terrible. Apparently, it's very, very difficult to clean up all the blood, and then you got the people walking through the blood and tracking it home. I mean, so I mean, it's this is the city of Chicago right now. This is the city of Chicago for a decade now.
mm,
And this is why I went to those press conferences with Lightfoot, and I asked her, there were 80 shootings this weekend. What's your plan? And she would look me dead in the eye and say, shootings are down. You are stupid.
wow,
And this is why these my videos, if you go to reporterwilliamjkelly.com, sorry, I got to do it, or if you even just Google Chicago reporter, it's really funny. I never would have thought when I started out as a reporter that that literally people could just Google Chicago reporter and it would be William J. Kelly, reporter William J. Kelly. But this is why these videos went viral. This is why Lightfoot lost, because
Mhm.
instead of answering my question, as I think you or I would have done, if you were mayor, if I was mayor, if any normal human being was mayor, they would have said, "My God, 80 shootings. This is horrifying."
How do we fix it? Yeah.
How do we
But
fix it?
instead, she demonized you. She said you were the problem for asking the
Yeah.
question about the 80 shootings. And,
Oh heck, I'm
I
used
love
to it.
what you say. It's disappointing to hear Republican lawmakers say, Chicago gets what they deserve. Well, it's no longer just
Kills me.
Chicago. And we heard that huge national story about the guy in Joliet.
Mhm.
My mom, she was like, "I'm kinda worried. This is a manhunt. They're looking for him." It was that mass shooting. I think 8
Right,
people dead, and then they wound up finding him in Texas, and he wound up
of
killing
course.
himself, and the US
Yeah.
Marshals found him, but, I mean, Joliet is not Chicago.
How much
Joliet is
more, yeah, how much more of this are Americans willing to quote unquote tolerate? Remember, we were told, and it was such a false bill of goods, when we were in high school or whatever, that we were supposed to tolerate, just tolerate, tolerate, tolerate. And I have to tell you something. How much more of this are we going to tolerate? Letting people come to this country and just open fire. I mean, waving their flag. I remember when immigrants would come to this country and they were desperate to get their hands on an American flag. They got the American flag tattooed on their body.
Mhm.
They couldn't wait to be Americans. Now you have people come to this country and they're still waving their flag from Central South America. Brandon Johnson, believe it or not, I don't know if this is good news or bad news, Kat, has already said that he um, does not cannot handle the situation. He wants Governor Pritzker to build um, housing for these migrants outside of Chicago. Okay. Now, as a Chicagoan, as an American, let's put it that way, and as a reporter, don't think that that's a good idea. We don't, I don't think, I'm not a military intelligence officer over here, but I do know that if you want to prevent military-aged foreign invaders from gaining access to your country, you don't, whatever you don't want to literally provide housing for them in the center of your country. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Mhm.
I don't, name a country, name any conflict, any war in the history of the world. I don't think, the Romans said to the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Huns, the whatever, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're gonna move you into luxury hotels in Rome. Really?
Yeah,
That's a bad idea, Kat. It's a horrible idea. Like I said,
terrible.
I'm not a military intelligence officer, but I don't think that you want to take the military-aged foreign invaders and literally put them in a Gold Coast hotel in the middle of your country, Kat.
Country, yeah. Yep.
Give me a break.
William J. Kelly, a veteran Chicago reporter, feared and despised by Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Brandon Johnson. Tell us where we can find out more about you. We've got to take a break.
ReporterWilliamJKelly.com.
Thank you so much, William J. Kelly. You have a great rest of your Monday morning. And folks, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Good morning. Hey, go ahead and smash the like button if you're watching and share this program out with your normie friends. We're going to be back talking about a superintendent from North Carolina where he was trying to really undermine the electorate. He didn't go through the Board of Education. He didn't inform the public that he was coming to this decision where he would close down a school district, and he was going to close down that school district for migrants to be housed there. And it gets worse because it's not just any old school district. This is a school where special needs kids are supposed to be learning. So I don't know if anybody learned anything from the pandemic. It should be that, hey, when you close down schools, that causes irreparable uh, yeah, harm, and you can't repair that educational harm that has been done to these students. And you would think that the left would not close down schools again, but here they are closing down schools in the name of, no human is illegal. No human is illegal. We're going to stand in solidarity. And it's just like, wait a second, wait a second. Um, Number one, I can't believe that they didn't go through the Board of Education on this, and the superintendent was trying to do this via, a closed door, which if you're doing something behind closed doors, chances are you're not doing the right thing. If you're being secretive about it, deceptive about it, and that's exactly what this guy was doing. So we're gonna come back. We're gonna wrap up the 7 o'clock hour or 6 o'clock hour, and then we're gonna get into the 7 o'clock hour. Today is Monday, so we do have Veterans Corner at 8 o'clock. That's something you've got to look forward to with Jerry Vogler. We talked with William J. Kelly about how bad it is in Chicago. Told me that story about these two kids, public school kids, coming out at noon and being shot on Wabash. Wabash is a very touristy area. When people say Chicago, this is the place that comes to mind, and this happened on Wabash. So this one was a different story. And this happened in the middle of the day, daylight, and they shot these two kids just in the face, and they shot them, and now they're dead in Chicago, and that's it's terrifying the lengths at which these criminals are going to commit these crimes and how sadistic they are and malicious they are. We're back now. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. You can always text me at 309-451-9299. We've got so much to hit this hour in the 7 o'clock hour. I want to talk about the school in North Carolina. This was a school where students who require specialized learning, this school was going to be shut down thanks to a superintendent who was like rogue. He was going rogue and he didn't inform the public about this. He didn't get approval from the Board of Education. Now, I think that this has stopped this closure, but they were going to close this school down, get this, for a resettlement facility for migrants, whatever that means, because it's unclear what this facility even does, what it's supposed to do. But this building was very important to the superintendent. Um, it was more important than having this building for some of the most vulnerable people in our society, which are children with special learning needs. Okay, that's the most vulnerable population in America, or at least one of the most vulnerable populations in America. And he was trying to prioritize illegals over American kids who need special learning, and he didn't get public approval. He didn't go to the Board of Education. They were trying to do this behind closed doors. And this county commissioner actually in New Hanover, so this was in North Carolina, but the county commissioner, he wrote an op-ed rebuking this superintendent and the announcement that this career readiness academy in Mosley, known as Mosley, the school, um, would be shut down and transformed into a newcomer school. So this would be a school for migrants. They were going to shut it down, this career readiness academy. So this was, a school for special needs kids. and it had special education. They were going to take that away from American kids, American students, and they were going to close all that down. And then they were going to open up this newcomer school. So, if we learned anything from the pandemic, right, left, Republican, Democrat, old, young, we learned anything from the pandemic, it's that when you close schools down, there there is educational harm that is done. It's irreparable, or irreparable, disastrous. You cannot repair the damage that has been done by closing up those schools during the pandemic. And we're going to get to that story here in the 7 o'clock hour. I also want to talk about Leah Thomas. Leah Thomas, Will Thomas, he's trying to stay relevant and he's taking legal action so that she can compete against women in the Olympics. So we're going to get to Leah Thomas. We're also going to talk about these two Starbucks employees because they fought off these robbers to save their own lives in St. Louis. The story is incredible because, and I always pull stories like this because I can't wrap my head around this. Why would a company fire heroes? Quite literally, these Starbucks employees, they were heroes. They saved their own lives, and then they saved the lives of all the patrons in the Starbucks at the time when these robbers tried to hurt them. And the company fired the Starbucks employees for being heroes and for saving not only their own lives, but the lives of everybody in that Starbucks. So we're going to talk about it here on the Morning Buzz. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. We got to take a short break. You're listening to Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Good morning. Hey, if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Leah Thomas taking legal action so that he/she can participate in the Olympics. Now, Leah Thomas used to go by Will, and he's still trying to remain relevant and be relevant, even though he's probably the most disliked male swimmer in history. We all know Thomas put on a female swimsuit one day and stole titles away from women who have been training their whole lives. But before that, he failed miserably as a male swimmer, and he failed miserably in the guys' competition. But because the left runs with this claim that this man is somehow brave for being a misogynistic degenerate, he's not backing down. The left is empowering this arsehole to do what he's doing now, and that is to sue his way into the Olympics as he has filed a lawsuit against the World Aquatics. So I've got that story here for us on the Morning Buzz. We're going to play a clip from Leah Thomas himself, and then we're going to chat more about this North Carolina school and then the Starbucks employees who uh, were robbed. They were robbed with fake guns, and one of the robbers actually hit the barista in the head with his toy firearm. And the Starbucks employees, they've been fired because they tried to stop a pair of robbers from holding up the company in this St. Louis store. So we're going to be back on the buzz. You're listening to Cities 92.9. It's Monday morning. Are you buzzed up on caffeine, buzzed up on news yet? Well, we're going to get you there by the end of the 7 o'clock hour because I've got so much for you. You can text me at 309-451-9299. I'm Kat Peterson, and you can always find us on cities929.com. You can find articles, and you can find content. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter for all kinds of content, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Kat Peterson 929. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Okay, before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about this North Carolina school. I gotta get to this, and then we're gonna get to Leah Thomas because he used to go by Will Thomas. He wants to be relevant. Okay, and that's what's going on. And he's the most disliked swimmer in all of history. We know this. One day, Thomas, he put on a female swimsuit and he stole titles away from women who have been training their whole lives to be these very competitive female athletes. And, before that, before he put on the female swimsuit and stole all these titles, he was a male athlete and he was participating in the guys' competition, but he failed miserably at that. So, yeah, the left is running with this claim that he's brave for being a misogynistic degenerate. Make no mistake, that's exactly what Leah Thomas is. He's a misogynistic degenerate, and he's not backing down because the left is empowering him. And now he wants to sue his way into the Olympics, and he's filed this lawsuit. We're going to get into the lawsuit, what he's trying to do. So stay with me. But first, the North Carolina story. So, like I said, if the the pandemic, taught us anything, and taught the left anything, it should be this. It should be that, hey, when you have school closures, that causes educational harm and it's disastrous. This statement is true for the average student. And I want to point this out, school closures are far worse for special needs students, students who need extra attention. Okay, these school closures just destructive for those who might have autism, ADHD, some sort of learning disability. So you would think that these people would have learned their lesson to never, ever, ever close down schools again after the pandemic, because we now see that this has caused educational harm. It's a disaster. We are looking at their grades. We're looking at their proficiency in math and reading. The kids can't read. The kids can't do math. This is just terrible. It's just terrible. And you would think that they'd say, "We're never going to close down schools again." But nope, none of that matters to the no human is illegal mob. They'll raise their fists, they'll say no human is illegal, Okay, but none of this matters. The educational harm done when you close down schools, the staff from the school district in North Carolina, they actually tried to secretly close down an educational or like a special education school. This isn't just a regular school. This is a special education school where kids with learning disabilities go to learn. And they tried to secretly close this down and turn it into what they call a resettlement facility for migrants, a facility for migrants. Now, it's unclear what that even means. I don't know what a resettlement facility is, but what is clear to me is that the superintendent at this school that it was more important to house and to have this resettlement facility, whatever that is for migrants, rather than protect the most vulnerable members of society. That is, children who have special needs. Okay, they are probably one of the most vulnerable members of society, but he put illegals over that population, over those students. A school in North Carolina for students who require specialized learning, possibly closing down. City officials are discussing turning it into what they call also a newcomer school, which is going to be used to house illegals and help them integrate into the school system. Illegals are prioritized over Americans, and they tried to do this behind closed doors without any input from the Board of Education, which baffles me. You can't do this behind closed doors. You need the public's approval. You need approval from the Board of Education. But this guy, the superintendent, tried to do it all himself. More often than not, you're going to see this. If people are sneaking around and they're trying to deceive the public and they're trying to do things behind closed doors, what they're doing is wrong and they know it, you know it, and they're doing it anyway. And these people, they call themselves the compassionate ones. You're not compassionate. You're doing something wrong and you know it's wrong. That's why you're doing it behind closed doors. So, fortunately, uh, because of how unpopular this decision was, and because the public did not like this decision, they have given up this moronic plan. They've given it up, and I don't even think it was really in their power to make this decision. But I don't think there's going to be a closing of this special education school. I don't think it's going to go forward, at least for now. So, according to the Daily Caller, this county commissioner there in that area in North Carolina, New Hanover is the area. He's a New Hanover County Commissioner. His name is Dane Scalise. Dane Scalise. And he wrote this op-ed, and it's a beautiful op-ed. I'm going to share some of it with you. And he rebuked the superintendent's announcement here that the Career Readiness Academy, that's what this North Carolina school is called. It's the Career Readiness Academy at Mosley. The school was commonly known as Mosley. And this county commissioner rebuked this decision for it to be shut down and transformed into some sort of newcomer school. So, newcomer schools may be called schools, but they're more akin to migrant resettlement and assimilation facilities. This is what Scalise wrote in his op ed. The mission of these facilities is not to educate the students in a traditional sense, but to allegedly help entire immigrant and refugee families integrate in the local community where they've been relocated. Mosley offers custom tailored education to local students who require special learning. That's what Scalise wrote. He said discussions and decisions of this magnitude should have been made by our elected officials on the Board of Education, not by staff behind closed doors. First of all, I'm in complete shock that this was decided by staff and not the Board of Education. That's infuriating, and every single person who was a part of that decision should be fired and the superintendent should be fired. You can't make a decision of this magnitude behind closed doors. These people were hired to care for the students of that district. And if they're not caring for the students of that district, then they need to be canned. How was it even allowed that the staff can make such an abhorrent decision? They shouldn't be meeting behind closed doors and coming up with this kind of stuff. But it's not their decision to make, that's the Board of Education. Since when was the superintendent tasked with making decisions on how to assist foreign nationals? I don't understand how a superintendent is tasked with that, but what's going on? They tried to do all of this without any public input and without the Board of Education's approval. Why do these people even work in education if they hate it so much? Clearly, the superintendent hates education. He doesn't want anything to do with teaching the special needs students. He wants everything to do with being a progressive and being a part of the no human is a legal mob. Okay. So I'm going to continue with the op ed here from the county commissioner in that area. He says, "Thank you to the citizens who joined me loudly in telling the superintendent that his plan to close the Mosley School and replace it with this newcomer school was wrong and it needed to be stopped immediately as a result of our voices and efforts." The superintendent announced yesterday that he indeed would be putting a stop to his plan in its entirety. So that's exciting, and I'm pleased that the school district will no longer be prioritizing foreign nationals over Americans. But the superintendent, I think, should still be fired. The staff that came to that decision, fired. Superintendent, fired. And he goes on, Scalise, in his op ed, he says, "I challenge our school board members, many of whom, I will note, also publicly oppose the superintendent's ill advised plan to make it clear that at the next public meeting, or at the next public meeting, that he and the staff are forbidden from pursuing such a path in the future." I think the school board member should go a step further and fire them all. Fire the staff, fire the superintendent. They have the ability to do that. And they can. This is not the first time a school district is going to decide to do something like this. It's just a matter of time, folks. We are dealing with an influx of migrants. We're dealing with 30,000 just, I think, this past year coming to Chicago on these buses. We're going to be dealing with this in our local school districts this year. I guarantee it. And just a couple of weeks ago, we saw an entire New York City high school went remote so that way they could house migrants. So it's already happening in these major cities, New York City, so it's Chicago. They're probably going to be shutting down these schools. It's already happening. They're shutting down these schools. They're housing migrants. There's been gymnasiums where they house the migrants. So I guarantee you that this, unfortunately, won't be the last time we hear a story like this. And the next time you hear a story like this, it's probably going to be a little closer to home. If it happened in a red state like North Carolina, I mean, come on, folks, it's going to happen. It's going to happen here in a blue state. So when we come back, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Leah Thomas. So I'm going to lay some groundwork and then we'll come back. We'll talk about Leah Thomas because Leah, who used to go by Will, by the way, is trying to stay relevant. That's what this says. He's trying to stay relevant, even though he's probably the most disliked male swimmer in history. Okay, we all know Thomas. He put on a female swimsuit one day and he stole the titles away from women who have been competing and training their whole lives for those titles. But before that, we know that Will Thomas, Leah Thomas, failed miserably in the guys' competition. And because the left, they run with this claim that this man is somehow beautiful and brave for being a misogynistic degenerate, he's not backing down. He feels empowered by the left because they're running with this claim that this guy is actually brave when in reality he is actually a misogynistic degenerate and he's stealing these titles away from women who have trained their whole life to get there. Now, guess what Leah's doing? Leah slash Will, he slash she. He's suing his way into the Olympics, and he has filed a lawsuit against World Aquatics. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You're listening to The Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Go ahead, smash that like button if you're watching. We're going to get to some of your comments. Um, I love this. Um, I've been saying it for years. All these empty warehouses and more being built to eventually house these people. Yeah, that's a great comment. I've noticed that, all these empty warehouses. Um, Everybody says that um Illinois, the Rust Belt, we know that we're the manufacturing powerhouse of the nation, Pennsylvania. But that's not so much the case anymore because we've shipped out all these jobs. Now, what we're seeing is these buildings of these warehouses and these new buildings, and it's like, wait a second, um, who's going to fill these warehouses? So we'll have to see. But I like this one. This one's a good comment. Jennifer, smash that like button. We're going to come back talking a little bit about Leah Thomas. Somebody's called Leah an FAG, female acting guy. That's what the text line said here. And I also enjoyed this text. I believe part of the reason for the tolerance of crime is to push digital currency. You can't rob anybody if you have no cash. So I could see something like this happening where they try to push digital currency because it's safer, right? You can't rob anybody. They can't rob you if you have digital currency. And it's always pitched as some sort of uh, convenience. Hey, this is convenient. Digital currency is going to keep you safe. And then that's how they take away all of your freedoms because digital currency, if they deem a purchase of yours, unfavorable, then they have access to shut down all of your accounts and to not let you have access to your money anymore if they find, that you're buying Zins. Chuck Schumer, he said that he wanted to ban Zins, these nicotine pouches that you um, put in your lip, and he wants to ban those nicotine patches. Now, what if you went out and you purchased those banned nicotine patches? Perhaps they'd shut down your entire um, your economic empire. So what you've built up, so they could take that away from you like that. And they're going to try to pitch it like, hey, this increase in crime, maybe you should get on board with the whole digital currency thing because you can't be robbed anymore. So great comment. Smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Earlier in the show, we talked about JB Pritzker announcing this $3.5 million in grants for the local grocers. Eligible grocers are going to be getting some funding. They can apply for that funding to get some equipment upgrades, and that's going to come at a cost $3.5 million to the taxpayer. And I'll explain this story more in the 8 o'clock hour. But this is the whole snake eating its own tail thing, where, they're not getting at at the issue. The local lawmaker or the lawmakers in Springfield, they're not getting at the heart of the issue. You have to ask the question, why can the rural grocery stores, why can't the small business owner buy the equipment himself? Why does he need the equipment upgrade? And why does he need the funding from the government in order to purchase a new cooler, a new freezer? And we're going to talk more about that story because I think that we've got a lot of business owners who listen to Cities 92.9, and things like overtaxation, the high energy costs. I mean, even right down to trying to process the credit cards. Okay, you're trying to collect payments, and they're charging you to collect payments. That's something that's facing small business owners, retailers. When they process the payment for a credit card, you've got to pay all kinds of fees. So there's so much in the state of Illinois that makes it not very friendly to small business. Okay, the state of Illinois is not small business friendly, and that's the problem. And you're just causing more problems. You're exacerbating the problem here, making it more unfriendly by taxing everybody to death. Death by 1,000 cuts. Okay, 3.5 million. Sure, it might not. It sounds like a lot, but then you spread it out across the entire state. Maybe people don't feel a huge tax burden from something like this. But there's multiple programs like this that Governor J.B. Pritzker unveils. He comes out with the big old Jerry Springer check, and he's like, I'm spending $40 million here, here, here for all of these different causes. That's the issue. It's death by a thousand cuts. And now these small business owners, these rural local grocers, they've got no money because you've taxed them to death and you've done all of these unfunded mandates. You've raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now you've got to pay, if you're a small business owner, you got to pay your employees for like 40 days of paid leave. That's like that's a mandate. You have to pay for their vacations and for them to not be at work. Okay, so it's not small business friendly, and that's the issue. But we're going to talk about it here coming up in just a little bit. I did want to hit the Leah Thomas story. So Leah Thomas, who used to go by Will Thomas, he's trying to stay relevant. That's what this is all about. Make no mistake. He's the most disliked male swimmer in history. We all know that Leah Thomas he put on a female swimsuit one day and he stole all of these titles from these women who have worked their entire lives, trained their entire lives to win these titles. And he just stole those titles away from these women who worked for it. Before he put on the female swimsuit, he was miserable. He failed miserably at the guys' competition. And the left, they run with this claim that he's somehow brave. He's somehow beautiful for being a misogynistic degenerate. And he's not backing down because he's got this empowerment from the left that they call him brave for doing what he's doing to women. And now he is suing the Olympics. He's suing to try to swim in the Olympics. It's crazy. So he's suing World Aquatics. He's trying to sue his way into the Olympics. That's what's happening. Let's take a listen to this clip. This is Leah Thomas himself. Let's take a listen.
Are there Olympics in your future?
It's been a goal of mine to swim at Olympic trials for a very long time, and I would love to see that through.
Are there
So there he is. He wants to see this through. According to The Guardian, Thomas has not swum since World Aquatics introduced their new rules in 2022. So World Aquatics, they've got these new rules as of 2022, which prohibit anyone who's undergone some sort of male puberty. Okay, if you've undergone any part of male puberty, you cannot participate in the female category here in the Olympics. Before then, transgender women actually were able to compete if they lowered their testosterone levels. Okay, so if you lowered your testosterone levels, upped your estrogen levels, you used to be able to participate in this World Aquatics. But they've changed their rules now. And they said, hey, male puberty, if you've gone through any kind of male puberty, now if you were able to get on puberty blockers at a young age, which not a whole lot of people were able to or have been able to get on male because those are new. This is all very new. Then you can participate in the female category if you do not go through any kind of male puberty. Now, you can get on very early in life. Say you're a 9-year-old boy and you get on male puberty blockers or puberty blockers, and then you take a bunch of estrogen at the age of like 9. That's their rules now. But nobody's really done that because it's all very new, the puberty blockers. So Leah Thomas did not do that. He went through male puberty. So in a scientific policy document that informed its decision, World Aquatics says that swimmers, such as Thomas, retain significant physical advantages in endurance, power, speed, and strength, and lung size from undergoing things like male puberty, even after reducing their testosterone levels through medication. So if he reduces his testosterone through medication and ups the estrogen, right? He still has all of these physical advantages. And that's not just World Aquatics saying that. They said that, look, we look through the science, the scientific policy document. We did not come to this decision lightly. And we don't need an expert. Okay. We don't need an expert to tell us that men have a physical advantage over women. Okay. If you grew up with brothers and you're a woman, you know that they have a physical advantage over you. Um, That is literally why we have separate categories since the beginning of time. We have had women's categories and men's categories. So, in a statement last week, the World Aquatics executive director, his name is Brent Nowicki, he defended the gender policy that they've got, the gender inclusion policy, saying it was rigorously developed on the basis of advice from leading medical and legal experts and in careful consultation with athletes. The World Aquatics, they remain confident that their gender inclusion policy represents a fair approach and remains absolutely determined to protect women's sport. Okay, they are determined to protect women's sports. They have a policy, which it's not even banning transgenderism. It's not banning transgender individuals from competing in women's categories. It's saying, hey, if you've undergone any kind of part of male puberty, you cannot participate. Uh, this man is so narcissistic, Leah Thomas will, and he thinks that he has some sort of right to compete against women to a point where he's trying to sue his way onto the team. If you need a court order to compete, that should be a sign to most that you are not wanted. Okay, to say the very least, you are not wanted in the Olympics, buddy. And because he's so arrogant, this guy does not care. I don't understand how you're not utterly embarrassed by what you've done, okay, and what he continues to do. If you need a court order to compete, that's sad, dude. That's just so sad, and it's embarrassing. It's painfully clear that he's a terrible athlete, and he couldn't even try out for the guys' team if he wanted to. He couldn't try out for it. They'd laugh him out of there. He's that bad, which is exactly why he's trying so hard to the point where he is suing the Olympics to get onto the women's team. He knows that if he were to try out for the men's team, he wouldn't make it. He wouldn't even make it. But competing against people who have a biological disadvantage does not make him remotely close to being what you would call a good athlete. You are not a good athlete, Leah Thomas, and because you're competing against people with a biological disadvantage and you're winning, that doesn't mean that you're winning. Okay. Um, He's nothing more than a national embarrassment, and I stand by the statement that he's probably the most disliked swimmer in the nation, possibly even the world, and good on the World Aquatics. They're not bending the knee here on their gender inclusion policy. All right, I do have to take a quick break. When we come back, Starbucks coffee is trash. It really is. It's loaded with insane amounts of sugar, and they try to mask the taste of the burnt roast. And there's this sour ass aftertaste. I've had better coffee than Starbucks coffee. Okay, uh, now for someone whose entire business model is based on finding ways to disguise this terrible taste, this revolting taste of your product, it shouldn't come as a surprise that they would treat their heroic employees the same way they treat their products, like trash. They fired these employees because they actually tried to stop a couple of robbers from possibly hurting a lot of people in that Starbucks, and it happened in St. Louis. We've got more on that story next on The Buzz. morning. Thanks so much for tuning in each and every morning. If you're watching, smash that like button. We're going to be coming back in just a couple of minutes for the radio folks. You can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Cat Peterson 99. We've got a lot of things to discuss this morning. The Starbucks employees. So there were a couple of Starbucks employees. This was in St. Louis. They fought off these robbers and they actually saved not only their own lives, but possibly the lives of those patrons inside this Starbucks. And of course, naturally, the company fired them. No, 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 no. They didn't they didn't put their faces in a plaque or in a frame and call them heroes. No, no, no. They fired these Starbucks employees because they fought off these robbers, which just blows my mind. Pritzker, he announced this $3.5 million in grants for these local grocers. Look, I'm all about the local grocery stores. Okay, I love the local grocery stores. I think that we should have more farm to table food available to us. However, here's the thing: the $3.5 million comes at a cost to the taxpayers. Okay, and there's this mentality of all these lawmakers where they're like, oh, well, if we spread it out, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Death by a thousand cuts. That's all I've got to say about, what goes on where these local grocers cannot afford. Why don't we answer the question why? Why can't the local grocers afford their own coolers, afford their own equipment? Why do we need why do the taxpayers of the state of Illinois need to pay for local grocers coolers? Why are we at that point? Okay, why can't they do it themselves? The reason is because there's overtaxation in this state. And then there's also high energy costs and there's unfunded mandates. There's all these different things that have added together to make Illinois a small business. It's an unfriendly small business state. That's at, that's at the heart of this issue. And, it's just this snake eating its tail where they try to fix this problem by throwing money at it. And that exacerbates the problem. And I just don't know how and why, like people much smarter than me, much, much smarter. They can't grasp that concept. They don't understand it. They don't see it that way. So I'm out in the morning buzz. Go ahead, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video right now, and we're back. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every morning. This morning, we've already talked about the superintendent where he was busted trying to secretly close down the school for special needs kids, and he was going to turn it into a migrant facility. He was going to do all this behind closed doors, which, I mean, more often than not, if you're trying to do something behind closed doors, that's probably a good sign or an indication that you're doing something wrong. But he was trying to close the school to house illegal immigrants. So it was illegals over Americans, and specifically Americans who are some of the most vulnerable of our society. We're talking about kids who need and require specialized learning, and they were going to close this down. This was a school in North Carolina. We'll visit that story here coming up in just a little bit, but also we'll talk about Governor J.B. Pritzker, this $3.5 million it's going to cost the taxpayers to provide the funding. So that way, local grocers can apply for these high efficiency equipment upgrades. Now, this is like the snake biting its tail, snake biting its own tail. And I just don't see why lawmakers in Springfield can't use their noggins. It just like, the $3.5 million are like, it's not that much money, and you spread it out statewide. It's no big deal. Okay, but it's death by a thousand cuts. We need to answer the question: why do the local grocers? I'm all about farm to table. I'm all about local grocers. I don't like shopping at Walmart. I don't like shopping at these big box stores like Walmart. I'm not a fan of it. I would prefer to shop local. But why can't they afford things like new coolers? It's because Illinois is anti small business. They are unfriendly to small business owners with unfunded mandates, and we are overtaxed. We have a taxation problem, and the reason why we have an overtaxation problem is because we spend money on things like this. This is part of the Illinois Grocery Initiative, and this is an equipments program. It's an upgrades program where they're going to get all kinds of money, and they're going to have to apply through the Department of Economic and Commerce Opportunity, whatever, the DEOC, and they've got to apply for that monies. And this all comes at a cost to the taxpayer. Well, small business owners aren't exempt from paying taxes. Okay, they've got to pay taxes on this $3.5 million, and it just baffles me. It baffles me how lawmakers cannot understand that when you throw money at the problem, it doesn't fix the problem. In fact, it exacerbates the problem. So we're going to talk about it here on the Morning Buzz. But first, I wanted to get to this story. It's a Starbucks out of St. Louis, and I always pull these stories because I find it fascinating that we are so pro criminal and we have demonized people who are anti criminal, police or people who take matters into their own hands. So now I was telling you, Starbucks coffee, it's kind of trash. Now that's not to say I don't go to Starbucks. Sometimes I go to Starbucks, but really, it's bad. It's loaded with insane amount of sugar, and they try to mask the taste of this burnt roast. And there's typically a sour aftertaste. Next time you have a Starbucks cup, just give it a taste and really taste it. They mask it with all kinds of sugar, and the entire business model is based on finding ways to disguise this revolting taste of their product by adding insane amounts of sugar. So it's no surprise to me that they treat their heroic employees the same way they treat their products, and that is like trash. They treat their employees like trash. Their heroic employees like trash. They might throw a bunch of money at these Starbucks employees, but if you want to defend your life, Starbucks will fire you for that sort of thing. So these two wannabe degenerate thugs, they tried to rob this Starbucks in St. Louis with fake guns, by the way. And one of the robbers actually hit the barista across the head with this fake toy firearm. It wasn't even a good fake firearm because when he hit and assaulted the worker, the toy firearm shattered over his head, right? So the employee realized at that point that he had to take matters into his own hands and save his coworkers and the customers. And these two Starbucks employees have now been fired, these two baristas, because they tried to stop a pair of robbers that was they were trying to hold up the company in St. Louis. So here it is. According to Riverfront Times, here's the whole story. On Sunday, December 17th, two men walked into the coffee shop in St. Louis carrying what appeared to be guns and telling everybody in the store to get down on the ground and give up any valuables that they had. Now, 37-year-old Joshua No, who's been charged, by the way, struck a patron over the head with a supposed gun, and it cracked. Realizing the men were not actually armed, the would-be victims turned the tables on the would-be robbers, and two people who fought back were store employees, and that's Michael and Devin. So Michael and Devin, they fought back. The attorney for Michael says that he was struck in the face, and that's what led to the struggle. After he was struck in the face, they realized that the guns were fake, and then they engaged the would-be robbers. Now, we now live in a world where doing the heroic thing is punished and the bad guys are rewarded. Okay. And this is why no one wants to save the day. We don't have any heroes anymore. Nobody wants to save the day anymore. And victims, more often than not, turn out to be the villain in the story, which doesn't make any sense to me. Michael, the guy who engaged the would-be robbers, he's the Starbucks employee. He said this in a statement: "I just wanted to do the right thing as a person and as an employee." The efforts of the two baristas and the Starbucks patrons were widely covered by local media. They were even praised for their quick thinking and proving once again that even the type of city resident who pays $7 for a latte, they're not somebody you want to mess with. Okay. So this is in St. Louis. This is not in a small town, right? This is just regular people reacting to a situation. And even the type of person who pays $7 for a latte, they are not people that is not somebody you mess with, okay, here in America. And Starbucks, they thought otherwise because they're a trash company and they project wokeness all of the time. They project this woke ideology. And the company probably thought it was racist for the employees to not only defend their own lives, but the lives of everybody else in that store, by the way. So these two guys, Michael and Devin, they promptly were fired by the company without any kind of explanation as to what and if any policy they violated or what they should have done differently about that situation. They weren't told, hey, you guys should have done this, you guys should have hid, you guys should have called the police. They didn't say anything. They just fired them. And the attorney said this in a statement. He goes on to say that Michael was outspoken about safety concerns at the store prior to this incident. So there was already a, hey, I'm kind of worried about my workplace. It's not a safe environment. And the attorney, his name's Krupp, Michael, he suspects that that might have been some motivation for the termination, because the guy was worried about his workplace being unsafe. So, question: would Starbucks rather have a whole bunch of people in that store get hurt or worse, killed? Is that what Starbucks would have wanted to happen? Would they have? Would that have been a better outcome for them to have all of these people in the store hurt, killed? The insanity is baffling, and it's incomprehensible. I just never understand these stories. It's infuriating that the two brave employees went above and beyond to help others, and the response by this company is to punish them. So, I'm gonna take a quick break. I gotta take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm gonna finish up this story. There's a statement that Starbucks gave. We'll get to that, and then a little bit later, we'll be visiting with Jerry Vogler from the McLean County VA. You're tuned in to The Truth, Cities 92.9. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate you tuning in. 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time, weekdays, Monday through Friday. Sugar Mama Bakery. They've got gourmet cupcakes, they've got pies, cakes, and these little things. They're called Big Mamas, and they're gooey oatmeal cookie sandwiches, and I just love them. And guess what? We're giving you a $25 gift card at half off. So get them before they're gone. They're at cities99.com. There's the Steals and Deals logo. You can click on the logo, and then you get your $25 gift card for half off. So, before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Starbucks, and I'm not a fan of their coffee. They tried to mask the terrible taste with a bunch of sugar, but this was the statement Starbucks gave in response to why they fired these two employees who stopped these would-be robbers. Okay, so they fired them because they defended themselves. So, a statement from Starbucks, they say, the safety and well-being of our partners, employees, and customers is always our first concern. Obviously not. You fired these guys, but okay. All partners are expected to follow our carefully crafted protocols to ensure safety of customers, partners during these situations. How pathetic. They should just be embarrassed and ashamed. And anyone complacent in the decision of punishing the employee should be fired. Okay. They should all be fired. I don't understand why you would fire these two employees. So these two fired employees now, they're filing a lawsuit against Starbucks, and this is one suit I can get behind. I hope that they cash out big on this one because you should not be punished for stopping they two Starbucks employees. They fought off the robbers and they saved their own lives and the lives of the patrons inside of that Starbucks, and the company fired them for it. Incredible. We'll be back in the 8 o'clock hour. You're listening to Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in each and every morning. You guys can smash the like button and go ahead and share this out with your normie friends. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Jerry Vogler, who will be on the line. And we're running through Veterans Corner today. Veterans Corner is something we do every Monday morning at around 8 o'clock, and it's for the local veterans. And I'm very excited to have Jerry on. We will be discussing Pritzker announcing this $3.5 million at a cost to the taxpayers. Obviously, the government is not in the business of making money. They don't create a product. They take money from you and they pay for things like this. And I just want to point out, yeah, these lawmakers, they've got these big ideas, right? They get these pitches and they're like, yeah, we really need to pay for the local grocers for their equipment. And they don't get at the answer of why the local grocers don't have the money for the equipment to replace these coolers or freezers if they're 60 years old. Okay, they don't get at the heart of the issue. They just throw money at the problem and it makes it worse. So we're going to chat about that here on the Buzz. We're back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I saw this text message come in, and we were talking about the Starbucks employees and how they got fired. They were fired because they fought off these would-be robbers, and they actually saved their own lives and the lives of the patrons inside of this Starbucks. They're heroes. They're heroic employees at this Starbucks in St. Louis. The company fired them for saving everybody. But this text comes in. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. 309-451-9299. You can now always text in. The store owners want to be robbed. They're insured and want to write it off. Well, if they burn the store to the ground, their insurance won't cover arson. So yeah, that's that's insane. That's a great point. These Starbucks, the Starbucks company, they issued some sort of statement and they said, "Hey, we have very strict protocols in place to deal with situations like this." And really, they've crafted these protocols probably because they want to be robbed because then they get the money. And obviously, the safety and well-being of their employees and customers is not their first concerned. Really, they're concerned about the money. So that's a great point. Thanks for texting in 309-451-9299. On the line with me, Jerry Vogler. We do Veterans Corner at around 8 a.m. every Monday morning. And today's Veterans Corner, we're running through Jimmy Dale Nagel. He left his earthly home on Wednesday, January 24th, 2024, and he will be residing in the post everlasting in God's hands. So we're saying goodbye to Jimmy Dale Nagel. Um, Jerry, tell me about Jimmy.
Jimmy, I can only use one word to describe him, Jimmy. He was unique, um, extremely likable, never knew a stranger, and the stranger never knew anybody but Jimmy once they met him. Anybody that crossed paths with him were always impressed with his enthusiasm, his hard work, his willingness to pick up the loads and carry it for everybody else. He was a three-time district commander for the American Legion for 5 counties here in central Illinois, 3 times post commander, served on lots of committees and commissions, and worked with the Boys State program, the oratorical contest, and so forth. He's going to be very greatly missed by everybody that has ever had a chance to know Jimmy. He died at 80, and his actual funeral will be today with visitation at 10 to 11 at Trinity Lutheran Church over on Madison and Wood in Bloomington. And then there'll be full military honors and a regular funeral mass for him. And he was just a super individual. I was lucky that I served as his adjutant or his assistant for all the times he was district and post commander, and I never had a better time in American Legion than those 6 different years that I was with him.
Well, we are sending our prayers for his family and friends here at Cities 92.9. Condolences to you, my friend Jerry. Um, he's going to be missed. And tell us again, the service is today, and visitation is from 10 to 11. Where?
At Trinity Lutheran Church, which is over kind of on the corner of Wood Street and Madison, just off the downtown area in Bloomington.
Okay. Oh, well, tragic. A local veteran goes to post everlasting. He resides there in God's hands. I do want to talk about this, Jerry, here on Veterans Corner. The VA, they are improving eyeglasses access. So tell me about that so we can help some veterans in Bloomington Normal who might be listening and are in need of some eye care.
Well, a lot of times when people go to the doctor, one of the things that bothers them the most is not necessarily the actual services that were performed, and this is whether it's private or with the VA, but more on how long it takes. Not unusual at all to go to a primary care who refers you to a specialist who refers you out for tests. And by the time you have started the process in November, it might be the middle of January before you actually have anybody do any real doctoring for you because of all the testing and the bureaucracy. With the VA, they're constantly trying to improve not only the services they provide, but how they provide it. And in this particular case, they have what they call Veterans Integrated Network services, VISNs. And two of the VISNs got together and ran a program, software program that they had developed that would cut the majority of the 40 steps that they found was necessary in order to get eyeglasses provided for veterans. And it just took too long to get that all done. So what they've come up with this software program that will cut thousands of hours nationally. Right now, they're using the program in 82 different sites around the VA system in the United States. It will be eventually incorporated in all the processes and so forth. But besides coming up with new treatment techniques, one of the biggest issues is always how quickly can you get those services to the vet when they need them. And this goes a long way in this particular area to take care of that.
Well, I also want to get to DBQs, not DQ like Dairy Queen, but DBQs. Jerry Vogler, tell me about Disability Benefits Questionnaire. This is a form the VA requires medical professionals, typically a veteran's doctor, inside or outside the VA healthcare system, to identify a diagnosis to the VA. Tell me how important this form is.
Well, the disability benefit questionnaire is essential. Because when a veteran files a claim for service-connected disability, it's usually for a particular thing, like diabetes because of Agent Orange exposure, or joint problems because of a knee that they banged up while they're in the military, and now they're older and it's given them more problems. But what happens is, if you don't have the right words to describe what went on and get it formulated in such a way that the claims adjusters in the regional offices of the VA who rate those claims, it takes more and more time to get the necessary information to make those decisions. A DBQ is one of, I believe there's 69 different DBQs, and they all concentrate on different areas. For instance, there's one for PTSD and depression, that sort of thing. And it asks a series of questions of the physician who treated that person. So that the information necessary to understand what the full extent of the medical or emotional issue was, that it's there in black and white. So the rating officer doesn't have to wait for months to get information from treating physicians both in and outside the VA system before they can make a decision on the claim. Speeds up the process a great deal because a lot of times treatment records and so forth are several years old. They still need that to see what the treatment has been and so forth. And then DBQs take care of that. It is an essential item. And if you get your DBQs filled out properly, it speeds up the process probably by about 75% quicker. in order to go from a claim to actually getting a resolution and getting a rating.
There you go. DBQ is important. What else is important is understanding that the VA has no income limitations on receiving VA service connected disability benefits, but income does play a role, doesn't it, Jerry, in VA healthcare, right?
Yeah, it sure does. And the interesting thing about the income means test is there's a lot of confusion out there, even though that means test has been in there now. This is its 21st year. It went into effect in 2003. Prior to that date, if you met the right number of years of service as required for eligibility in the VA at the time you got out of the service, you could always go into the VA system anytime you wanted to. However, in 2003, mainly because of the large number and long length of time that veterans served during the Vietnam from about 1959 to 1975, they put a means test on it. When I say they, the VA and Congress put it on, which if your income was above a certain amount, you would be enrolled in VA healthcare, but not have access to it. That way, if your condition got worse and you filed a claim, then you could get access to the actual care. What's happening now with it is they're slowly but surely taking little pieces of that. Congress passed a bill that allows all existing World War II veterans to be able to get VA health care regardless of their income. Now, they waited a heck of a long time to do that and let most of the World War II veterans pass away before they had that claim, but at least they're starting there. Also, that means test can be stepped around. If a person has a service-connected claim, even if it's rated at 0% for actual compensation, that 0% rating for disability would give them access to the VA health care. As well as there's a number of different rules if you served in Vietnam or during the recent PACT Act about toxic exposures. If you fell in one of those places that are identified, for instance, that Agent Orange was used outside of Vietnam, but in Samoa and Guam and several other places, Thailand, you can now get VA care and actual access to the care, even though you didn't serve in Vietnam and your income was too high. So they're doing the right thing. It's just taking a heck of a long time to get to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they're starting. Now, I do want to talk about the Legion Baseball. So, American Legion Baseball for decades has provided boys across the country and in McLean County with opportunities to learn about baseball and the virtues that playing well organized baseball entails. So, having that sport and learning about baseball and everything that goes into that. The American Legion is behind this. American Legion Baseball. Tell me about this.
Yeah, American Legion Baseball for about 50 years was a real part of the community here in McLean County and especially in Bloomington Normal. Over the years, however, it got less and less used and hasn't really had a Legion program in Bloomington Normal for probably 15 years, somewhere around there. And as such, the boys within the area didn't get the advantage of having American Legion Baseball, which not only concentrates on baseball as a game, but also as a personal building block to learn how to play as a team member, to care about your more than just the score, how you performed in terms of being a human being and a good person and that sort of thing. Goes along with the other Legion programs like Boys State, oratorical contests, and so forth. A group of veterans, some of which played Legion Baseball a few years ago, have gotten together now, and they're going to have an organization meeting to reestablish Legion Baseball. Normally, Legion Baseball is by post. Each post could have a team. However, this one is going to be more county-wide, which posts that don't have teams, which right now none have Legion teams, will be able to have their boys come in and play for this team. The program will start with Leroy. However, all the home games won't be played in Leroy. They'll be played around the county to generate interest. They're going to have a special speaker on February 29th. at the Leroy Methodist Church at 6 p.m. Interestingly enough, they're going to have Pastor Tom Zobrist come down and talk to the group about God, Americanism, and Legion baseball. It's kind of interesting because Tom Zobrist is the father of Ben Zobrist from the Eureka area, who was the most valuable player in the Chicago Cubs' last World Series win in 2016. So he knows a lot about Legion baseball. He knows a lot about God, and he knows about America. And it should be a great evening. Parents are welcome to come in. Non-parents who are just interested in the baseball program can come in and be a part of rejuvenating the Legion baseball program in McLean County.
Awesome. And tell me about tryouts for the junior age to Legion baseball. Those are scheduled for August 2024.
Yes, Legion baseball is not just where a bunch of adults get together and decide to have a team. There are all kinds of rules and regulations and processes that have to be set up in order to make sure that the program is, number one, legit, that it's run properly, and it's run for the benefit of the kids. The Legion baseball will actually have tryouts in August for the season that will begin probably in May of 2025, and it'll be a junior team. There's junior teams and there's senior teams. Junior teams are like 15, 16-year-olds. Senior teams are 17, 18-year-olds. But the actual first season, should be beginning sometime in May 2025 and run through the early fall.
Hey, that's exciting. Awesome. And before we go, we had somebody text in. He said, you mentioned American Legion. How does a veteran join the Legion? Is there a requirement of deployment to a foreign country or war zone, time frame, etc.?
Actually, as of about 2 years ago, Congress finally approved the American Legion to open up its membership. Prior to that time, you had to have served at least one day during a time of declared war. So if, for instance, you were a National Guard or reservist, and your service in the Guard Reserve overlapped with at least one day of a wartime period, even though you didn't serve in the war, you could belong. Now it's open to all veterans, basically since December 7th, 1941, with all levels of service. The way you would apply, state headquarters is down on Lincoln Avenue in southeast Bloomington, or if they called me at the VAC at 309-888-5140, I can talk to them about it and get them referred to the right place. And we'll talk about membership and so forth at different locations. In addition, of course, we're a veterans organization, not just a Legion organization. So if somebody is interested because they were a wartime veteran and served in combat, they want to belong to the VFW or DAV or AMVETS, one of those organizations, I can help them do that too.
Wonderful. Jerry, you are so helpful to the veteran community here in Bloomington Normal, and we thank you for joining the Veterans Corner Monday mornings, and you have a great rest of your day, Jerry.
Yeah, you too, and thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, Leah Thomas taking legal action so that way she can compete against women in the Olympics. Find out more next. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate you guys tuning in each and every morning. We're going to come back talking a little bit about Governor J.B. Pritzker and this announcing of $3.5 million for local grocers to apply and try to get grants to replace their equipment. So we're going to talk about that. Leah Thomas taking legal action so that he, I don't know, can compete against women. This guy is trying to stay relevant. That's what this is all about. He wants to stay relevant. People despise this guy. He's probably the most hated swimmer, male swimmer, definitely in all of the world, if not the world, the country. So we're going to talk about Leah Thomas. We're also going to talk about the school district in North Carolina. So North Carolina, this is a red state. So this is kind of interesting where we've got North Carolina, the school district. It's actually a school made for children who have special needs requirements. They need extra attention in this school. And if anything, the left should have learned from the pandemic is that when you try to when you close down schools, there is educational harm done. We can see that across every district, especially here in the state of Illinois. Kids can't read, they can't do math at grade level. And the harm that was done is just, you can't repair it. And it's especially true for those students with special needs. But nope, these people never learned their lesson. They're actually closing down this school for the no human is illegal mob. And they want to close down this school and they wanted to build this resettlement facility for migrants, a newcomer school. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. Smash that like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also comment in the comments section and share this out with your normie friends. Blackout coffee is for the win. Yes, I do like blackout coffee. Ryan, we were talking about how Starbucks coffee kind of sucks. Anyway, Starbucks, the company, they fired a couple of employees because they stopped some would-be robbers and they saved the lives of everybody in that establishment, not only their own lives, but everybody else's life. And they got fired, but they're suing the Starbucks company. So I hope they sue them into oblivion. Hope they come out with a bunch of money. Smash that like button, and we are back in about 10 seconds. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I appreciate you tuning in each and every morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. Invest in your physical and mental health. Right now, Frequency Martial Arts, they're offering discounted membership opportunities that will help you get in shape while building confidence and making friends. Frequency Martial Arts, supply your child with the tools to help them succeed as they learn to deal with adversity, set goals, and work with others to improve on and off the mats. Okay, so this is a great physical activity and it's a break from the gadgets, a digital detox. Get them in Frequency Martial Arts. Invest in your physical health and mental health, and supply your kid with the tools they need to succeed. Frequency Martial Arts. Now they have discounted membership opportunities that's going to help you get in shape, but you can also steal your deal on Steals and Deals. That's on cities929.com. There's deals there for Frequency Martial Arts. You can check it out. Just click on Steals and Deals. It's this big tab. You can't miss it on the cities929.com webpage. Now, before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Governor J.B. Pritzker and this $3.5 million cost to the taxpayers. This is for local grocers. They can now apply and get funding for energy efficient equipment upgrades. So I talked with a Republican lawmaker, Fowler, and he said that the rural grocery stores in his district have a hard time competing with the big box stores because they don't have a whole lot of money. These little grocery stores, their equipment, their coolers, their freezers, 60 years old, and their energy bills are through the roof. And I talked with Fowler. He said that in one of his counties in his district, he's a state representative. He said that there's not a single grocery store. So there's this whole talk about food insecurity, which I've never really understood, because when I say food insecurity in the United States, you're like, really, Kat? So I don't get the whole food insecurity things. So what if there's not a grocery store in a town? That's because there's some towns that make the food to fill the grocery stores, and then there's some towns with the grocery stores inside of the towns. Okay, so typically the areas that don't have the grocery store, they're the areas that make the food that fill the grocery stores. And I grew up rural. We didn't have really a local grocer. We had to go about 30 minutes to the nearest Walmart. We had a small grocery store up the street, but if we wanted, cat food, dog food, we had to go to the big box stores, and we had to, drive out to the Walmart. But we're also a farming community, so we're the ones who are providing the food for the grocery stores. So we're cool with it. Okay, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Okay, there's some areas that don't have grocery stores, and there's areas that do have grocery stores. Sometimes you got to drive and go to the grocery store. It's gonna be okay to drive 30 minutes, okay? Just because a grocery store isn't within a baseball, throws distance away from you doesn't mean that there's food insecurity, okay? It just means that you gotta go drive and you gotta go get it. I don't understand, but, anyway, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is to get at the question, why do the local grocers not have enough money to replace their equipment? Why do small business owners not have enough money to replace their equipment? What is that? I'll tell you, it's unfriendly to small business owners. This is the state of Illinois. They are unfriendly to small business owners, and it's through actually programs like this. This is the Illinois Grocery Initiative, and through it, there's this, the equipment's upgrade program. And, they're spending so much money, $3.5 million of taxpayer money. So throwing money at a problem isn't going to fix it. We need to begin to ask ourselves, why do small business owners not have enough money to pay for their own coolers and freezers? The reason is things like overtaxation and high energy costs and unfunded mandates. And, I spoke with the Illinois Fuel and Retail Association, the CEO, Josh Sharp. He talked with me about, initially this Illinois Grocery Initiative equipment upgrades program wasn't going to be extended. This funding wasn't going to be extended to convenience stores or non-traditional grocery stores, and they were opposed to it. The association was, but eventually they got it to where the bill was amended and they included non-traditional grocery stores, but they've got to go through the application process, the Department of Economic and Commerce Opportunity. I don't know. They are going to go through that application process and let me say award, um, these grocery stores and these non-traditional grocery stores. In order to receive those funds, they have to have things like fresh meat, poultry, dairy, all of those things. Now that's all listed in the statute, but my point is, with Sharp, the conversation went a totally different direction, because he was telling me about labor is the highest operating cost. Then you've got to keep the lights on. Then on top of that, you've got something that people aren't talking about: small business owners having to pay to process credit cards. So here in America, people use credit cards. Okay, we use a lot of plastic, and now these small business owners have to pay in order to process the payment. And currently, Congress, they're working on some sort of legislation. It's called the Credit Card Competition Act. I think JD Vance is on it, as well as Dick Durbin. So it's bipartisan legislation. But point is, the small business owner is attacked from every different direction. Your death by a thousand cuts. You'll get lawmakers that say, 3.5 million cost to those taxpayers. It's spread across statewide. It's really not that impactful to the taxpayer. Okay, but if you say that for every single program that costs 3.5 million, eventually we are going to feel an impact. And that this is like the snake eating its tail. Throwing money at the problem only makes the problem worse. So I wanted to chat a little bit about that. Plus, when we come back from break, I do want to talk about the superintendent who was busted. He was trying to secretly close down this school for it was special needs kids. Like, wow, the most vulnerable of society, and you're going to do this to them. You're going to close down their school for it to be turned into a migrant facility? What? That's next on the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Go ahead and smash that like button and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're back talking about the North Carolina school that's next on the buzz. Mm, 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 mm. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Superintendent busted for trying to secretly close down the school for special needs. It's a school for special needs students, and he wanted to turn it into a migrant facility. So we're going to get to that story. Plus, Leah Thomas taking legal action so that he can compete against women in the Olympics. So all of this and more ahead on the Morning Buzz. I'm live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. So if anything, if the pandemic taught us anything and taught the left anything, it should be that, hey, school closures, it actually causes educational harm and you can't fix it. It's damage that's done. It's disastrous. Look at the school districts across the state. They can't do math at grade level. They can't read at grade level, the students. And, you know, closing down schools was bad for kids. And that statement is true for your average student, but school closures are worse for those with special needs and those who need a little extra attention. So these people have not learned their lesson. And you would think that they'd say, we're never, ever going to close down schools again. But nope, that doesn't matter. None of it matters to the no human is illegal mob. They're a mob, and what they wanted to do at the school district in North Carolina, they wanted to secretly close this special education school and turn it into what they call a resettlement facility for migrants. It's unclear what this facility even is, but what is clear is that this superintendent cares more about these migrants than the most vulnerable people of society. We're talking about kids with special needs. Okay. And he thought that this facility was more important than them. And the school in North Carolina for students who required this specialized learning is closing down. But there was some outrage. And now I don't think that this newcomers school will be housing illegals. And they were going to city officials were discussing about turning this newcomer school into a place to house illegals and to help them integrate into the school system. So illegals prioritized over Americans. They tried to do this all behind closed doors without any kind of public input and without the approval of the Board of Education there. And more often than not, when you're sneaking around trying to do things and deceive the public, that's probably a pretty good sign that you're doing something wrong. But these people, they call themselves the compassionate ones. We're so compassionate. No, you're not. You're doing wrong by the public. And fortunately, this decision was very unpopular, and the public heard out about it. And I think they've given up their moronic plan, their idiotic plan. And I don't even think that they really had the power to decide this anyway. The superintendent wanting to close down the school and turn it into some sort of migrant shelter. But I don't think they're closing down the special education school, at least for now. So I've got to take a quick break, but I want to read through this op ed from the county commissioner there in that area. It's called New Hanover County in this North Carolina area, and he rebuked the superintendent's announcement that this Career Readiness Academy in Mosley, that's the name of the school, better known as Mosley, he announced that they were going to shut this down and transform it into a newcomer school. And this county commissioner did right by the people and he condemned this and he rebuked this decision and this announcement. And I'm excited to dig more into it when we come back on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. It's Monday morning, 8:48 a.m. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in each and every morning. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to The Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. And we're going to wrap up this story about the North Carolina School District possibly closing down. It doesn't look like they're going to do it anymore because the public was very upset about this decision where the superintendent wanted to close down the school because he wanted to change the school into some sort of migrant shelter. And this was a special education school. And obviously, we're putting illegals over Americans. And, this is going to start to happen in communities near you. Clearly, this has already happened in New York City where they shut down an entire high school and they went remote to house these migrants at that high school. So I guarantee this will unfortunately not be the last time we see a story like this one. And look, um, it's it's bad. I'm pleased that the school district is going to be no longer prioritizing foreign nationals over Americans, but the superintendent, I think, should be fired. We're back. So, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. His name is Dane Scalise, and he's a county commissioner. And he wrote this op-ed, and he pretty much rebuked, condemned the superintendent at the school where they were trying to shut it down and transform it into what they call a newcomer school. Now, a newcomer school may be called schools, but they're more akin to a migrant resettlement and a simulation facility. This is what Dane Scalise, the county commissioner in that area in North Carolina, wrote about this school. And he said the mission of these facilities is not to educate students in a traditional sense, but to allegedly try to help entire immigrant and refugee families integrate into the local community where they've been relocated. So this is a migrant shelter, and they're going to try to assimilate these immigrants and refugees with the local community. And Mosley, the school, they offered custom tailor education to local students who require special learning. And Scalise, he says, discussions and decisions of this magnitude should have been made by our elected officials on the Board of Education, not by staff behind closed doors. So that's, first of all, I'm in complete shock that this was decided by staff, not the Board of Education. And it's infuriating and every single person who is a part of this decision, the superintendent, the staff, they should all be fired because they're doing work, the people's work behind closed doors, and they're unelected, like they're unelected, and these people were hired by the school board to care for the students of the district, and they're not caring for the students of the district with this abhorrent decision to close it down and then to replace that school with some sort of migrant facility. But since when is the superintendent tasked with decisions on how to assist foreign nationals? Because it really just doesn't feel like his job. They tried to do this without any kind of input from the public and from the Board of Education. Why do these people work in education if they hate it so much? Clearly, you hate education if you're willing to close down schools for special needs kids and house migrants, illegal immigrants. So I'm pleased that the school district is no longer going to be prioritizing foreign nationals over Americans because in the op-ed, Scalise, this Dane Scalise, he says that I'm proud of I thank all of the citizens who joined me loudly in telling the superintendent that his plan to close down Mosley and replace it with a newcomer school was wrong and it needed to be stopped immediately. As a result of our voices and our efforts, the superintendent announced yesterday that he is indeed putting an end to his plan and in its entirety. So that's exciting. I'm glad, but I still think that the superintendent should be fired for trying to push this decision through as an unelected bureaucrat and doing it behind closed doors. But look, folks, I don't think that this is going to be the last time we hear a story like this. Just a couple of weeks ago, an entire New York City high school went remote to house migrants. It's coming to a school near you. This is not the first time a school district has decided to do something like this. It's not going to be the last time. And next time, it might even be closer to home. So, all right, folks, you guys have a great rest of your day. That's the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you. Find me on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's Kat Peterson. Have a great Monday. Glenn Beck is up after me. Then Dan Bongino, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Mark Lee Van Camp and Robbins, Ben Shapiro. we've got an amazing lineup for you here at Cities 92.9. Bye bye.